So this is your podcast for the first module. I'll be doing a podcast like this for each module, which will basically just cover what you're going to be looking at in the chapters for the module. For example, this one is chapters 1 and 2, so Intro to Social Psych and Social Cognition. Like I said in the introductory podcast, every week with each module, I'll give you sort of a to-do list of what you're looking at for the week. Some of this is repetitive right here from what's in the Start Here menu, but I just want to be thorough. I want to make sure you guys get all of that. And then the newer stuff sort of starts down here. So every module, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking over the chapter objectives and taking a look at, okay, what will I be learning for each chapter? You'll have slides, lecture slides that go with each chapter that I've prepared. And then you'll also be reading the articles that I post. Usually there's 2 for each module, and they're short articles. The articles come from either popular psychology resources or classic journals of classic studies in social psych that have been done. And sort of the author talks about them in the context of how they're applied to today. So you're always going to have 2 articles, and you're always going to have 2 chapters from the book to cover each week. After you've covered the articles and you've read the chapters, you've looked over the lecture slides, the best way to actually do that while we're here, I'll let you know, is to have the lecture slides with you as you're reading the book, because then you can sort of compare what's in the lecture slides with what is in each chapter, so you'll kind of know big key ideas of what to focus on for the readings, and it will just help with the ease of reading through the material. So you'll have those, and then you'll also have a discussion board link, which will give you the questions for the discussion board, and you'll have an exam pretty much each week covering the 2 chapters. So here's the objectives for Module 1. We have objectives for Chapter 1 and objectives for Chapter 2. So Chapter 1 is basically introducing you to the field of social psychology. How do we conduct research in this subfield of psychology? What's the methodology like? So in other words, what types of research designs are used to collect data when we're looking at social psychological concepts? Social psych is a very applied area of psychology, so you'll see a lot of experimental designs, you'll see a lot of correlational designs, and you'll see a lot of research that is applied to career or job contexts like criminal justice and education and social work. There's a lot of crossover between some of those fields. So pretty much in Chapter 1, that's what you're doing. You're getting kind of the background story of how social psych started and what are some of the big key ideas. Also, what are the perspectives that are often taken within social psychology, like what kind of mindset do we use when we're examining different things that are happening in the world. So it'll give you some ideas of how we go about doing that. And then it'll end with talking a little bit about deception. Oftentimes in social psychological research, deception is used because we can't capture people's real behavior sometimes without a level of deception. So if we're going to use deception, how can we do it ethically? What does that look like? So we'll talk a little bit about that and the ethics of research. And Chapter 2, Social Cognition, is where you really start getting into the meat of social psychology. And every chapter actually builds upon one another. So as we get into later chapters, you're going to see they draw a lot from some of the early chapters like social cognition and Chapter 3, which we'll cover next week, social perception, and then attitudes. That is all rolled into the later chapters, such as prejudice and discrimination, love and relationships, social influence, aggression, and group dynamics. So some of these early chapters, it's really important that you get a strong understanding of the concepts that are in each. So here in social cognition, it's basically social thought is what it is. How do we think in a social context? How do other people affect our thinking? And how are we affected by others' thinking? How do we form ideas of how we see the world? So we'll talk a little bit about schemas and taking in new information. We'll talk about how what we think in our heads can often then compel us to behave in certain ways. And that's where we get into self-fulfilling prophecy in a number of different relationships that can be applied to. And we'll talk about different styles of thinking that people have that can create some bias in their reasoning or bias in their opinions and then affect their behavior. So that's a really cool chapter. I think you'll like it a lot, and it's got a lot of concepts that you really want to take good notes in this chapter because those concepts are going to pop back up again, like I said, in later chapters. Here are the two chapters, a PDF of each. Those are also in the Start Here menu. Just in case you don't yet have your book, you can get them there. Here are the two article readings. So Article 2 goes with Chapter 1, and then Article 9 goes with Chapter 2. Here are your lecture slides for Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. And here is your discussion, along with how to do a discussion board post, which is also located in the Start Here menu. So Module 1 discussion, you want to be integrating in both the articles and the text chapters. So when you're answering each of these questions, you want to answer them and use support from the article and support from the chapters to support what you're saying. Okay, so you don't want to just throw out an opinion or throw out an idea. Well, you do. You just want to back it up with information that supports it. Okay, so every time you're discussing something, you want to make note of where that concept came from or what different things covered in the material helps to make a certain point. So Article 2 deals with ethics, okay? So does Chapter 1. They both deal with these ethical issues, deception, and such. So you want to integrate both those resources into your answer. And Article 9 is all about pluralistic ignorance, which is a negative effect of how people think. So it goes with social cognition, the chapter on social cognition. It's a way of thinking. I mean, ignorance we know is kind of a negative word. When we say ignorance, really people get a negative connotation, but ignorance is just not knowing something. That's it. I mean, it's really not a negative thing, but we think of it negatively. Well, why? You'll read in this article exactly what it is and how it relates to a bias in the way we perceive the world and then can affect our behavior. So here you want to integrate and cite the author and the date of this article, which is all on the first page of it. And then you want to also integrate and cite Chapter 2, which is all about social cognition. What concepts in the social cognition chapter can be used to help explain pluralistic ignorance. So there's where you're looking to integrate as much as you can. And again, take a look at the rubric of what I'm looking for in a discussion board post. That's going to help you a lot. And then you have your first exam. It's going to be due May 26th at 11:59 p.m. If you start the exam after 11:29, it will not let you start because you technically wouldn't have enough time to finish it. So be aware of that. You have 30 minutes to complete the test. If you start it at 11:45, you're actually not gonna be able to start it at 11:45. But let's say you start it at 11:15, and it takes you longer than 45 minutes. The test will close and it will shut you out once this time has been reached. So the minute it hits 11:59 p.m., the exam will just close wherever you are. So please be aware of that. Make sure you leave plenty of time to work through the exam at your own pace within that, sort of 30-minute time frame. So you're given 30 minutes and you want to make sure that you have all of your 30 minutes to complete the test. Once 30 minutes is up, you will be shut out of the exam and the exam will stop. So please be aware of that. I think the best way to study for the exams is using the Revel resources, so that access code that came with your book. There are practice exams in Revel for each chapter. There's study guide resources for each chapter. So those are meant to help you. I don't look at those, I don't grade those, they're purely for you. So you want to make sure that maybe you do the Revel exams first, because it will tell you exactly what you missed, what you need help on, what you didn't understand, and then better to get it wrong there and go back and restudy whatever concepts you need to, rather than getting it wrong here on this exam. It's no notes and no book, and you have the same amount of time that I would give my in-class class. So when I teach this in person, it's a 40 or 45 question test, and students have about 45 minutes to do it. So it's pretty much the same, and no notes and no book. So that's why it's really just important to prepare the best you can before taking the exam. All your discussion posts are due on Thursday. Your original post is always due Thursday, and then your replies or your responses to other people's posts are due Saturday. So I would assume that by Thursday you've read the chapters, you've watched the videos that come with the chapters, and this week you don't have any extra videos. There are some videos though in Revel. So if you go back up to the to-do list here, it says watch the video links that accompany this module's chapters, and they're embedded in the chapters of the e-text. So when you're reading the e-text, it will show you or tell you when there's a video that you should watch that goes along with a concept or goes along with something that you're learning. All those videos you should always watch. The chapters you should have read. All of that stuff should be done before you ever start your discussion post, because you want to be able to use that stuff in your discussion post to support what you're saying. So just make sure that you're doing that, and then you can use these chapter objectives as a means of studying too. You can quiz yourself. These are all the key things from the chapter that you should be able to answer any one of these questions, and they're not quick answers. It's define, describe, outline. These are multi-part questions, and if you set yourself up nicely on a study guide and take notes for each one of these questions, you should have a nice outline for yourselves to study with for the test. Then go ahead and take those Revel exams, see how you do, and maybe revise your studying or study a little bit more, and then go back to take the exam when you're all finished. So that's pretty much it. Please let me know this week as you're working through things if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer them. You can email me. It's just swilliams@westfield.ma.edu. And I look forward to getting your responses back and taking a look at those and giving you some feedback. Have a great week, everyone.